Let's remind you what happened today. This is the biggest transfer portal news. You have been with us all day long, and we so appreciate it. But let's recap. Walter Nolan, the number 2 recruit in 2022, is now our number 1 transfer portal player, and 99 rating for him. Looking elsewhere outside of Texas A&M, would not rule out him staying with the Aggies, though. That is the general consensus. And then in quarterback news, Ohio State QB Kyle McCord is on his way out, and a few of his teammates, too, including Julian Fleming. Both of those guys will get a lot of looks in the portal. And then Oklahoma quarterback Dillon Gabriel also entering the transfer portal. We're seeing those connections to Oregon for him. We'll continue to talk more about all of the headlines that have happened. But guys, as we sit here with half an hour to go in the show, Cooper, what stands out to you most about what you've seen so far?
Dillon Gabriel, he would be at the top of my board. I talked about it. I think if you're Ohio State or whether you're Oregon, you're throwing everything you got at this guy. I think both those teams think that they can win a national championship. I think both those teams, the pressure is kind of ramping up a little bit more. I think that's the guy.
What has been the most impressive thing to me so far today has been the amount of quarterbacks we have. I think we have 10 to 12 guys that you can turn your whole program around or get yourself in the winning circle with.
Yeah, along those lines, the big quarterback news, Kyle McCord from Ohio State. Let's welcome in our news breakers to give us the latest on what is happening now. Matt Zenitz in the Zenitz Cave and Chris Hummer from his home studio. Chris, I'll start with you. What are you hearing as far as the latest on Ohio State?
Well, the big news of the day is Ohio State needs a quarterback now. Kyle McCord entered the portal this morning, totally shifted the quarterback landscape. I've had several schools tell me this morning that Ohio State kind of gets to eat first in this scenario. They are the top dog in the quarterback market, arguably alongside schools like Oregon, Washington, and USC. But Ohio State, given its quarterback production in recent years, I think vaults to the top of that market, and it totally shifts this landscape of quarterbacks. I would expect them to go after guys like Cam Ward. I think they'll make a run at Riley Leonard, even though he's trending towards Notre Dame. I think there's going to be several QBs in that mix for them.
Matt, what are you hearing?
Tried to stay on top of today is just the situation at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So obviously Walter Nolan, well documented at this point that we have him as our number 1 transfer as things stand right now. There are a number of other Texas A&M players that, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, are very much being monitored by other schools to this point. For what it's worth, and I know this is an extremely boring update, but the way it was described to me by one source that I just talked to in the last 20 minutes, things are, quote-unquote, very fluid right now with A&M. And as I'm sure you can imagine, Mike Elko and that staff trying to do everything that they can to prevent some of those other noteworthy players from leaving.
What might seem boring to the viewer, I'm assuming, is pretty chaotic there in College Station right now as they're trying to figure it all out. Chris, I said you're joining us from your home studio. We'll get back to him in a little bit because I want to get an update on what's happening with the Texas situation. And I know Chris is not far from that area. But Matt, I'm going to go back to you. You mentioned Texas A&M. They could be potentially in the market for a quarterback. But overall, just kind of recapping the day, what does the quarterback market look like? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so first of all, with A&M, even though Connor Wegman got hurt for them this year, I would think that they feel good enough just about the talent that he has and the flashes that he showed before getting hurt that would feel pretty comfortable about him being their guy for moving forward. But we've had a number of guys go in. Carl referenced it. It's been the big story of the day in terms of quarterback movement. And with Dillon Gabriel, obviously, some early buzz. Rightfully so in terms of Oregon, just a place that if you look at it for both sides makes a lot of sense as a potential fit, even though there are a number of other schools naturally that are interested in Dillon also. But like for me, I know we've talked a ton about some of the big name guys. There are some younger ones also and more under the radar that are garnering some solid interest to go along with that and have even like obviously we've talked about Dante Moore is a freshman quarterback who is going to have some very good options. But Sam Levitt from Michigan State's another one for me. So Sam, it was a top 100 recruit in the 23 class, and he's getting interest, it sounds like, early on from some schools like BYU to go along with some other ones at the Power 5 level. But I think with him being a Pacific Northwest guy, that it'll be interesting to see if maybe a Washington State and Oregon State could end up being an option there. If I remember correctly, he was committed to Washington State at one point. But that's a top 100 kid at the quarterback position that just with all of the big name guys that have gone in, that's kind of gotten overshadowed a little bit But one more to go along with that. So Brock Vandegrift, one of the latest quarterbacks to go in. Some of the early schools that have come up for me to keep an eye on as either places of interest or just worth monitoring. Kentucky, Auburn, Florida State, those would be a few that seem to be just on the early radar, just worth keeping an early eye on with Brock.
Yeah, Brock Vandegrift, the backup quarterback at Georgia. Chris, home studio means home Wi-Fi, but now we got you back. What can you tell us about the team not too far from you in Texas? What's the latest on their quarterback situation?
Well, I think the Wi-Fi over on the 40 acres is a little better than it is at my house. And I mean, we like to say in this neck of the woods, the eyes of Texas are upon you, but I think the eyes of the nation are on Texas's quarterback room. Obviously, Arch Manning is the name that looms above it all. Everybody's interested in Arch. Based on everything we've heard, Arch is perfectly happy at Texas. I think the expectation is he will be back in 2024. The real question mark in the room is what happens with Quinn Ewers and what happens with Malik Murphy. Matt's reported it before, and a lot of us have been hearing similar things about Quinn being likely to return to Texas in 2024. But you never know what happens during a college football playoff run. He just had the best game of his career in the Big 12 championship game. And we'll see how he plays during the stretch run for Texas. That could impact his decision. But right now, it feels likely that he's back, which means Malik Murphy, kind of the guy in the middle of that quarterback room, a really gifted signal caller from California, might end up being on the move. I think it's probably trending in that direction. A lot of teams tampered with him last offseason. And I'm not sure if Malik wants to wait another season behind Quinn Ewers and then potentially have to battle Arch Manning for that job in 2025.
Yeah, we were keeping an eye on him coming out in the spring portal window, so certainly a name to monitor. Chris, Matt, thank you both so much. I know the Wi-Fi is working because I'm getting tons of updates from both of you. Breaking news, not just when it comes to portal movement, but head coaching movement. And of course, if anything happens, you will find it on 247sports.com. These two are all over the homepage with all the news and intel. We're going to bring it back here in Studio A and talk a little bit more about Ohio State. Obviously a big name program, but man, it's going to be a different year for them next year. Not only just with losing Kyle McCord, but Julian Fleming is also a prolific wide receiver. It does seem kind of like a dime a dozen, though, in that wide receiver room for Ohio State. So if you're speaking to Buckeye fans right now, Coop, how do we kind of calm them down a little bit and say, new could be better? It's a new age at Ohio State, but it could be okay.
They're in great hands, with Ryan Day, and I think a lot of people were calling for his head after the Michigan game. You flip the script, Carl. A couple years earlier, they were doing the same thing in Ann Arbor, right? Now they got a chance to go play for a championship. So I think patience wins out at the end of the day, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. Ohio State has one of the best infrastructures of any program in any country. They've been doing this for a really long time. Mark Pantoni, the associate AD over there in terms of recruiting, talent identification, evaluation, he's the best in the business. This is what they do. They're prepared for this situation as much as possible. And listen, Chris just said it. They got first crack at whatever quarterback they want. So whether that's Cam Ward, whether that's Dillon Gabriel, I'm sure they're going to have to work through the financials to get that done, but I think Ohio State will be able to do that. So they have the right people in place. This is one of those scenarios where change might actually be a good thing. You haven't beat Michigan the last 3 years, so if they weren't doing anything, I'd be a little bit more concerned, right? So if Kyle McCord you thought was the guy and you haven't gotten the result that you wanted, then you need to make a change. They're doing that. I think they got really smart, aggressive people that are very aware of what people outside the building are saying. Not that they care, but they know and they understand the expectations of being at a place like Ohio State, where their job ultimately at the end of the day is to deliver national championships.
You can't calm this fan base down, Emily. You cannot calm this fan base down.
I know, that was a tough question.
They don't care whether they get Cam Ward, Dillon Gabriel. They don't care if they run the triple option. Just beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Just beat Michigan. Sounds easier than it is, but that's all this fan base cares about.
Well, you guys talking about just how they'll have the pick of what quarterback that they want. Let's remind you who some of the top quarterbacks are in the portal right now, because there's a lot of talent from, potentially developmental guys like Adante Moore, a 5-star coming out last year, or a lot of grad transfers, players who have played a lot of football, a guy like Will Rogers throwing for over 12,000 yards in his time in the SEC. We've discussed Aidan Chiles quite a bit too, our #1 transfer portal quarterback. It sounds like there is a link to Michigan State. Our own Brandon Huffman putting a crystal ball in for him there. Brock Vandegrift is a guy that we discussed as well. But I want to ask about Riley Leonard, because initially he goes into the portal, he puts the do not contact, and then no fewer than 50 crystal balls come in for him to Notre Dame. What's potentially next for him wherever he ends up? What kind of possibilities are waiting?
It's pretty funny. I mean, you just heard Chris talk about Riley Leonard. All of a sudden, his name is starting to pop up a little bit more, right? We thought this was done. We thought he was going to Notre Dame. The other thing that you think about is, we talked about it earlier, there's some turnover on that staff on Notre Dame, especially at the receiver position. New receiver coach Mike Brown coming in. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but they have lost some talent there. That room needs to be flipped. And if you're looking at a one-year rental like Riley Leonard, is that the best situation for you to go thrive and boost your NFL stock? The school out there, and really not in context to Riley Leonard, but maybe so, we haven't heard anything about Hugh Freeze and Auburn today. And we know that that program is aligned from the top down, right? And what I mean by that, if you need me to say it pretty clear, they're going to pay for whoever they want at the quarterback position, right? So I don't expect them to sit idle, as this has been one of the deeper transfer portal quarterback cycles that we have seen in a long time. You got a guy from Alabama that's got a chance to potentially develop into a day one NFL draft pick if everything comes together. I think Riley Leonard might take a step back for a second and say, you know what, let me kind of re-examine the field here a little bit. And you got teams like Ohio State like him. You got teams like, obviously, like Notre Dame, and then Auburn kind of sniffing around a little bit. The other thing about that is, Carl, the longer he waits, the price only goes up, right? So
I think that Riley Leonard had every intention of going to Notre Dame. I think all our guys were right when they crystal balled him to Notre Dame based on the intel that was going on throughout the country. But money talks, and BS runs a marathon. And so when you get down to who's going to pay, there's going to be some other suitors that come in, and you got to at least hear them out.
The other thing I'll say, you look at Auburn's receiver room potentially. They got two guys in the top 32, two 5-stars coming in. Cam Coleman, who flipped from Texas, big body, 6'3", 180 pounds. We compare him to George Pickens. Also Perry Thompson as well, out of the state of Alabama. I mean, they got some dudes, and these aren't like regular dudes who are going to have to sit a year. These are guys that can play early day one in the SEC. So I think all that kind of comes in to the equation for Riley Leonard, and it might have been slam door, open and shut for him in the beginning of the process with Notre Dame. But at this point, I think maybe cooler heads prevail. Maybe he's taking a step back, re-examining the situation, and say, hey, there might be a better situation out there for me.
I love the philosophical discussion we have about where to go in the transfer portal when it comes to the quarterback position, because you could either get a guy that's played a lot of football, you know what he looks like, he's coming in mature, or you could take a chance on someone like a Dante Moore. I mean, he was one of our top quarterbacks in the 24/7 Sports rankings coming out of high school. So what upside does he provide, Coop?
He provides a lot of upside. You watch his game, I think, a couple different games throughout the season. I think the Utah game is kind of the tail of the tape. Sacked multiple times in that game. He dealt with a lot of interior pressure throughout the entire season. For a young quarterback, if you are looking for a recipe of disaster, it is pressure up the middle and in your face constantly, and that's what Dante Moore dealt with. That being said, he's got to have some accountability on his own shoulders, whether it's going to UCLA to begin with or whether he's got to take a step back and say, hey, I didn't play my best football. I thought he was way too loose with the football at times this year. And that's why I said a couple of minutes ago when we talked about best fits, I think Michigan kind of makes some sense. That is a ball control offense that really understands how to maximize their opportunities through the air. I don't mind him going to a place like Michigan, going to a place like Ohio State, under the tutelage of a Ryan Day, under the tutelage of a Jim Harbaugh, sitting a year and getting those reps running the scout team. I think that's okay. In the same time, I can also see him going to a situation where there's not that much competition and being a guy who can play early. But for some point or another, Dante Moore is either going to have to find the right fit, or he's going to either have to do both, find the right fit, find a competitive quarterback room, maybe dial it in a little bit, and he might have to sit and really kind of get that year back. I think that's important for him.
You know, when you talk about him being loose with the ball, though, that's why we're talking about guys like Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day, because those are things that can be coached out of you. Those are things that can be taught out of you. Those are things that can be developed out of you. So I think for a guy like Dante Moore, like we've said over and over again on the show today, his development has to be key in his decision making.
Yes, and hopefully that is something that he takes into consideration when taking a look at his next school. If you can't tell, quarterbacks have totally ruled the day here on Transfer Portal Palooza. So for more on the most important position in football, let's head over to Grace. Hey.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, we expected a robust quarterback market, and it's been exactly that. Brandon Huffman, Smoke Dixon with me here. Now, there's a couple options teams can take when they're looking at quarterbacks in the portal. They can go for the stopgap guy who's kind of the transition between a current playoff contender, transitioning them to the future, maybe a highly rated prospect on their roster, or they can go for a more long-term player. So let's look at the stopgaps first. Huff, when you look at the guys currently in the portal, who's your favorite?
I think Will Rogers. He's going to be in a position where he gets to play with leverage. He gets to go to the right system that just needs that one-year guy. And with the crystal balls pointing to Washington, you can't ignore what Michael Penix has done the last 2 years for Kalen DeBoer, for the Washington offense. I believe he's 24-2, has a team number 2 in the country playing for a potential spot in the national championship. If you're a transfer quarterback and you know that a career can be resurrected like that. Remember, Will Rogers put up big numbers when he was Mike Leach's quarterback. Now he could go to Washington, play for Kalen DeBoer, and have that same kind of impact. I think that could be a absolutely perfect marriage between Will Rogers and Kalen DeBoer and the Washington Huskies.
Well, you said Washington. I'm going to stay Washington State. Cameron Ward. This guy's skill set is NFL-like. I know that we compared him to P.J. Walker in terms of his size, but his skill set is greater in terms of being able to pass the ball out of the pocket with accuracy, anticipation, touch, and timing, and has enough athletic ability when the play breaks down to get outside and create. Now we understand what's the biggest factor in college football right now. Someone that can play in the pocket, but we all understand the pocket breaks down. And this guy creates outside of the pocket at an alarming rate and keeps you in game. But this is a young man that can come into your team today and get you into the conversation of playoffs and national championship. I think his skill set is that well.
He's getting a lot of interest, too. A couple other guys garnering a lot of interest, Aidan Chiles and Dante Moore. And of course, that's the other option teams can go, is taking a younger guy who has several more years of eligibility. Huff, you were the first to break the news that Chiles was planning on entering the transfer portal today. You think he might be following his previous coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State. What are you hearing?
I do, and I think you look back at the Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley marriage that came from Norman, Oklahoma to Los Angeles and won a Heisman Trophy in year 1 when they were at USC. Now, am I saying Aidan Chiles is going to win a Heisman Trophy at Michigan State if that's where he ends up? No. But what I'm saying is sometimes you play the longer game. You know you're going to get at least 2 years of Aidan Chiles wherever he ends up. It would make the most sense where as he spent this first year learning Brian Lindgren's system, learning Jonathan Smith's system, being around that culture, being around that program, being around everything that they do schematically, it would make sense for him to follow those two coaches to Michigan State, and you know you're going to have the 2024 season and the 2025 season with them, so you get the opportunity to have 2 years. You can build around that. You can go into the portal and get other receivers to come join them because they see this guy's got a chance to be an instant impact player. If you look at the receivers that joined Caleb Williams at USC last year, Jordan Addison, Brennan Rice, Mario Williams, they all knew that they were going to get 2 years with him, or in Addison's case, 1 year, and it turned into a first-round draft pick. That's what's going to help you with the other positions of the portal. Like Smoke has said all day, it's not just the quarterbacks, it's the other positions that will join that quarterback out of the portal because they know that they want to go there, they're going to be able to play with a big arm, and that's going to enhance their NFL potential.
Yeah, the guy that I'm going to go with is Dante Moore. And this is what makes him special and different than a lot of these quarterbacks on this list. He plays from underneath the center. And when you have a guy that can play underneath the center, run play action games, and also play in any kind of offense and throw these sick throws, just whipping it and flicking his wrist, he has a lot of talent. And like Coach Carl said, once you get into a system that you get a quarterback guy that can unlock this young man, he's going to whip it around the yard and make a lot of us go back and think about what did Chip Kelly do to this young man out there to make him want to go into the portal and not perform at the level that we all that evaluated him believe that he can perform at.
We do have some breaking news. Boise State quarterback Taylon Green has announced he's entering the transfer portal, although he does say, quote, in his tweet, "I'm not closing the door on returning to Boise State." He and the Broncos just won the Mountain West on Saturday. Huff, what do you know about him?
You know, he's a guy that I'm a big fan of. I watched what he did on Saturday to a UNLV team that had been really playing at a high level, and he just sliced them and diced them. And it was a weird situation with the dual quarterback there, but I think he's originally from Texas. It wouldn't be a surprise if some of these Texas schools, maybe a Texas A&M, decides that they want to bring him home. He's going to have options, whether it's return to Boise State or going to Texas and playing for one of the home state schools. He's going to have definitely some choices to be able to make.
Well, A&M does have a spot now with Max Johnson leaving. All right, thanks, guys. Plenty of more news on the way. You can find it all over at 247sports.com. But we had a pretty cool experience earlier this morning. Deion Sanders joining the show. He absolutely absolutely has flipped this transfer portal world upside down with the biggest roster overhaul in history last season. Here's a bit from Coach Prime.
Oh, the portal is open, correct? Well, if you watch this play, what did you say? Oh, boy, if they just had some protection for Shador. Oh, if they could just get after that pass, they would be So we're going to address that. We're going to address that in the portal and from the high school rankings. You got to understand, high school, to me, it's like draft choices in the NFL. The portal is free agency, and we're in free agency right now. And I'm thankful that we have and we will have the wherewithal to go get what we need. We have two priorities right now, okay? We're going to run the football and we're going to stop the run. We're going to protect Shador. You do know that I'm not only his coach, but I'm his daddy, right?
I know that. I know that.
You do know it hurt my heart to see my son out there getting beat down every darn game. You do know that? Like, I do a great job of disconnecting and masking and understanding that I'm a coach now. But that's my son. Okay, y'all do know that's my son. So I got to do what I got to do to make sure he's straight. So I made some moves to try to assure him of a better protection. But right now, it's all about protecting the quarterback, running the football, and stopping the run. So we're going to be very active in the portal, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, a few corners. I'm looking for some dog corners for FCS schools. I'm telling y'all right now, I'm looking for you. You know, it ain't hard to find. I'm going to find you, but that's what I want. And we're going to put it together, my man.
Coach, how big is it to lose commitments in the class of 25 or in any class when guys flip? Does it really hurt you like that?
It's not big to lose kids in the class of 25. You know how long that is to stay committed to a person that you don't see but maybe once or twice a year? That's tremendous. I mean, you got to understand, at this point, we have not lost anything that we desperately have to have. Now, if you say a Travis or Shador or this guy or that guy, I got a problem now. Now I'm going to have to address that. I'm looking at this portal stuff, and I'm seeing quarterbacks and key guys from certain schools. I'm like, ooh, I know that hurt. They weren't ready for that. It's going to be attrition, and you're going to lose certain players because that's just life. That's just everybody's not going to be happy when you got 120 kids inside of the locker room. Everybody's not going to be happy. They're not going to get their appetites appeased. I understand that. That's why you're constantly recruiting. You're constantly going out to improve, and you're creating competition, man. And that's what I love. I love that you got to go out and compete every day in practice just to start on that Saturday. I love that. That's the atmosphere we desire to create at Colorado. That's the atmosphere we're going to create at Colorado. And that's how it's going to be.
Coaching staff changes. You made a change at the end of the season at the coordinator position. Now that coordinator has moved on to be a head coach at another school.
That was the plan. Wasn't that the plan?
Yeah.
Okay, when you leave as a head coach and you come as a coordinator, don't you think you have plans to blow up and leave again? That was the plan. So the plan was executed. I am happy for Sean Lewis. I am happy for whomever he took with him. I'm happy that he's elevated. Sean is a good guy. I have no quarrels with Coach Lewis.
Did the committee get it right? I got to hear your opinion on the matter.
But first and foremost, I want that part. I want no problem. Can I have that problem? Can I have those problems, please? I want those problems. Thank God the committee got it right next year where there's a bigger gate and open for a plethora of schools having the opportunity to go to the playoffs, and we plan on being one of them. It's no way that you're going to leave Coach Saban in Alabama out of a playoff and Georgia. No, you're not going to leave Georgia and Alabama out. It ain't no playoff if you do that. I'm happy, man. I'm not happy. I don't know how I would have handled that. I think Coach Norvell did a wonderful job articulating himself, speaking his truth, and the players supporting him as well. That's a tough one, man. I would love to be in that situation. Unfortunately, we're not, but we plan on being in that situation. But that's a tough one. But they're going to always go with the business. See, people think it's just football, man. You got to understand this is a business as well.
That was just a fantastic interview, and you can catch that whole thing on our 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. If you are not already subscribed, what are you doing? No, just go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Over 200,000 of you have hit it and have hopefully enjoyed it. Carl, for people that missed that interview, again, go watch it. But what stood out to you the most?
Coach Prime knows what he has to do with his football team moving forward. Run the ball, play great defense, take care of the quarterback. That's what he's looking for. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman is a big thing for him in this recruiting cycle, both through high school and both through the transfer portal. A couple of staff positions to fill, but he knows exactly where he's looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to take Coach Prime at his word. It seems like he's got a plan, and I'm ready to see it unfold. I mean, the thing is, you talked about running the football, dead last, 130th out of all FBS teams. You talked about protecting the quarterback. They gave up 56 sacks. Only Old Dominion gave up more with 61. You talked about stopping the run, 106. Right now, they only have one offensive lineman committed. All day, we've been talking about where do you get your beef from? Everybody gets your beef from high school, typically, right? And they're after guys like five-star Jordan Seaton, Jaquan McCord, also committed to Oregon, a big guy. Both those guys, tough, physical guys that can play early at Colorado. But they also lost 2 offensive linemen already, guys that were starters. So, listen, I love his energy. I love his outlook. This is a team that is improved, believe it or not. They won 1 game the year before he got there, 4 games this year, not to mention everything that comes with Deion Sanders and the media hype and all the attention. It's a good thing for Colorado. But me, personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing, all right, how are you going to improve this offensive line and the defensive line as well? You got to stop the run, and you also got to be able to run the football. They did not do that this year.
We haven't seen a lot of offensive linemen hit the portal today. It is just day 1, so we'll continue to monitor that. But a guy that Deion Sanders and every other program in America would love to add to their squad is our number 1 transfer portal player, and that is Walter Nolan. You got that 99 grade. Cooper, you've been all over his recruitment, both in high school and what he has done in college. Why is he so deserving of that top spot?
He's a war daddy, 6'4", 290 pounds, can play multiple positions on the defensive line. I mean, I've been talking about it all day, whether it's 1 technique, you need him inside, you need him in a 3 technique, he can do that. You need to rush him off the edge, you can play him as a 5 technique. He is so versatile. It is so hard to find these type of guys in college football. So everything he adds from an athleticism standpoint, a versatility standpoint, and his ability to just disrupt the game from a pass rushing standpoint and ability to stop the run as well.
Big Walter is a guy that you want on your football team. He's a guy that you want in your family. I got a couple cousins that are single. Big Walter, holler at me. Give me a call. I want to invite you to Christmas dinner. We need somebody like you with us.
Oh, goodness. That is so fantastic. That is stuff that you are not going to get anywhere else. Before we go, let's head back into the Zenitz Cave with Matt Zenitz. What you got?
Well, first of all, I feel like I've reached a point where I need energy drink. So you and I were joking about that earlier.
We're almost done.
Emily, I've reached that point of the day where I need it. But we've had close to 500 at this point FBS scholarship players that have entered the portal today. It's been a very active day. But not to be the guy that throws out the teaser or anything like that, but we've obviously got a lot of time left in this portal window, have multiple weeks of things that are going to be going on. And I'll just say this, there are numerous things that have come up for me during the course of the last couple of days, including today, not only in terms of quarterback position, but skill position players, defensive players of note that I know are strongly considering movement there. So it just makes it even that much more important to stay locked into us at 24/7 because we're going to have some updates of significance, I think, coming in the next couple of days, and just important to stay locked in this time of year because I can tell you for sure there's some stuff in the works right now where we're going to have plenty to talk about throughout the course of the week.
And the portal will stay open for 30 days. It closes on January 3rd. I don't mean this as a joke. I think Zenitz could name all 500 players that hit the portal today. He has been all over it. Real quick, we're about to say goodbye. Final thoughts, Scoop.
I think we talked a lot about Ohio State. We talked a lot about Oregon. We did not spend a lot of time on USC. How about them 7-5 with a Heisman winning trophy quarterback in Caleb Williams? What do they do with the quarterback position?
Offensive linemen, not a lot of them, but it's a lot of people that need it.